Good morning. Welcome to my kitchen today. I'm going to make, well, I've got about 4 kilograms of hamburger, the nice lean stuff, and I thought I would show you how I do mini meatloafs and meatballs and anything to do with the same basic ingredients as meatloaf has. I've ground up, and these are going to be as low carb as I can possibly make them. So for 4 kilograms of hamburger, I've added about half a package of one of the strips of regular crackers. You can add cornflakes. That makes a nice filler. You can add oatmeal, uncooked. That's another one. So I've added about a teaspoon of red pepper, and I'm adding hopefully a couple, bigger holes. A couple teaspoons of hot paprika, or spicy paprika I think it's called. And this is just my seasoned salt. I don't know what's in it. But about a little over a teaspoon of that. And some black pepper. About a teaspoon. And about maybe half a teaspoon of garlic powder. You can add more garlic, but Don says he doesn't like it. But if I don't put it in, he notices it missing. Okay, and about a little over a teaspoon of onion salt. That I made up myself. I used my onions, ground them into powder, and then put some salt in it, and it's really nice. When I learned to make meatloaf, it was because my father said you cannot put ketchup on meatloaf because it's an insult to the cook. So I got out the cookbook and I learned how to make meatloaf. And the next time we had it, I said, there, I can put it on because I'm insulting myself. But I really didn't understand the recipe. It said poultry seasoning. And since when my mother cooked poultry, she used sage. So ever since then, I've been putting I put in about 2 teaspoons of sage. But you could use poultry seasoning. I don't think I've ever even bought poultry seasoning. Now my secret is, you soak the filler in milk. Just for a couple of minutes. And it really adds to the moistness of the meatloaf or the meatballs. And there's only one problem with trying to show somebody up when you're a kid. My mother said that I made really good meatloaf, so it was my job to make it after that. But there, you just put it in some milk, let it absorb for a couple of minutes while you mess up the hamburger. And I have to use my hands because trying to do it with a spoon is just too hard on my arms. I may have to do this in 2 batches. It still feels frozen. Yeah, I'm going to get another bowl. Good thing when Don buys, he buys big. I have 2 huge bowls now. And another secret to making really tasty meatloaf or meatballs is when you've got all the seasonings in that you think it needs, you take a little blob about the size of a golf ball, put it into a microwave dish, and you zap it for about 30 seconds. You let it come out, you taste it. And that way your meatloaf always tastes good. Now, I'm only going to add half of that because I don't have all the hamburger in there yet. But you just mix it up. You don't want to over mix it because you don't want tough meat. And if you like Italian seasonings, you can put in oregano and things like that, but we like just plain, that I can put them with a gravy, or if I want to, I can make spaghetti and meatballs. Well, not spaghetti, but spaghetti sauce and meatballs. But you do need a filler in it. But I put in as little as I can possibly manage. And I forgot the best ingredient. Worcestershire sauce. It's probably about a tablespoonful. A lot of people put eggs into it, but I very rarely ever do. Now, Don really likes meatloaf. And so when he is night shift, I leave him a meal out in our warmer. And I've found that 2 meatloaves, about the length of my palm, and I cook them that way, and then I freeze them individually. And when I put them in the freezer, they're in a plastic bag. And when he's night shift, and it's Thursday night, and I can't think of what else to get him because I haven't eaten supper, and I usually cook the same thing, I pull out meatloaves, and they're that size. So for a child, 1 would do. For an adult, 2. And you can have meatloaf anytime you want it, and you don't have to cook up a huge meatloaf every time you want it. And you don't cook meatloaf in a pan. If you do, all the grease that you're hopefully trying to get rid of by buying lean and extra lean and all that, but you still need the fat for flavoring. If you do it in a loaf pan like it's traditionally done, all the grease goes back into the meatloaf. So if you do it on a pizza pan or a griddle pan, that way the grease doesn't reabsorb and the meatloaf tastes better. And when these are done, I put the oven at 375 and I cook them. It takes about 20 minutes. And then they're ready to go. I cool them. I put them into the freezer individually, and they're ready to go. But you could also freeze them up raw, and then if you decide you want a big meatloaf and it's raw, you thaw it out, you form them all together, and you can use 6 or 7 of them and make a big meatloaf. But if you serve meatloaf, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, roasted vegetables, it's a nice, quick, easy meal, and getting it frozen and into the freezer from start to finish takes about 3/4 of an hour. So you've got all the work done on a day that you feel like it, and on a day that you're not up to cooking or you forgot to get something out of the freezer the night before, pull out the meatloaf. I usually serve it with coleslaw, roasted sweet potatoes, and frozen corn. And it makes a really nice meal. Don thinks I've worked so hard to do it for him. Well, he knows now because he's seen me doing it. But it's just nice and quick. And it goes well if you take a lunch to work. It doesn't fall apart like sometimes meatloaf after it's cooked does if you're trying to pack it. And I'll make these up, and then I'll use the same mixture in the other half, and I will make up meatballs. And all my work is done in one day. I've worked for possibly half an hour. The longest it takes is the cooking. But I've got meals for about 13 meals, or the starts of meals. And if I don't feel like cooking roasted vegetables, I'll pull out some canned carrots that I've done and serve that, coleslaw or a lettuce salad. And I think I'm nattering here, so I'll shut up now. And I will do up the rest of these. I'll show you what it looks like as they're going into the oven along with the meatballs, and hopefully I won't look like too much of an idiot. See you later. I'm back. I got tired and my back started to hurt making meatballs, so I made one into a little meatloaf. It's just in one of the tin foil packages. I've got 36 meatballs, and I've got 13 meatloaves. Dawn eats 2 at night on night shift, so I've got quite a few meals there. I've decided to cook the meatballs. Sometimes I put them in raw and then just drop them into the sauce and they cook that way. You can do it right from frozen. You don't have to wait for them to thaw out. And we're having meatloaf for supper since I had to make a little one. I'll bring you back once they're cooked. My oven's only at 305 and it needs to be at 375. I'll stick them in, and I think the meatloaf takes about 20 minutes. The meatballs take about 10. And so I'll bring you back in about half an hour to see the end result. And I've used lean ground beef, and so there shouldn't be too much grease in the bottom of the pans. But anyway, that was my project for today, and I thought I'd let you see how I do it. Now I've got to clean up the mess. Bye for now. Okay, this is the finished product. The meatballs, which I make a lot smaller than most people, they took 20 minutes, and the meatloaf took a little bit more than half an hour. But here's what they look like. I don't cook them so that they're really cooked. I leave them fairly moist and just barely cooked, because when I put them in the warmer for the meatloaf in the warmer for Dawn, I put it in frozen at about 7 o'clock. When he gets home at 5 a.m., they're nice and warm. They're ready with the rest of the meal that's in the warmer. And I usually, if I cook up add the meatballs, I either put them in the oven and have them as snacks, or I put them in a sauce. So I don't want them so that they dry out. So they're just barely cooked, and when they're cold enough, I'll put them in the freezer. I would take them out to put them in the garage, but we're only at -7 today. If we were -39 like we were last week, I'd put them in the garage and let them freeze out there. But I'll let them cool, put them on a tray in the freezer, and then put them into freezer bags. And I've got meals for, I think I have about 10 meals here, because we're not big on meatballs, but with the meatloaf, 2 do Dawn, and that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 14 meals that I don't have to worry about. And the meatballs, they can stay in the freezer until I either put them in gravy and call them Swedish meatballs, or add them to spaghetti sauce, or make meatball subs. But it'll all get used. I just didn't feel like canning today. So this was what I did today. This is the end result. And like I said, the time was, from start to finish, about 2 hours. The meatball rolling is the hardest to do, because you try and get them all just about the same size. And when Angie gets here, I will teach her how to do it, because they don't use much beef in China because of the price. So Hi, Angie. Get ready to learn how to make meatballs. Bye for now. Bye-bye.